Hello, viewers. Joanna Dos Santos here with my beautiful colleague Brian Mandy. Welcome to our weekly webinar. Today's topic is procrastination versus precrastination. What keeps things in the way from achieving our goals? And what is it that we can do to actually achieve some of those goals? So just to I read an article, it was on Psychology Today, and I mentioned it to Brian that procrastination is something I think, and I know I say I think a lot, but that we all deal with in some ways. And it could be small things that we procrastinate with, larger things that we procrastinate with. And versus the precrastination, which is a new kind of nice, silly way of looking at it. Precrastination puts us in a present moment. It's what is it that I can do today, versus procrastination, what I have not done and what I will be pushing off until tomorrow. So this is just a nice way to look or maybe utilize the precrastination as a way to focus on your tasks and actually have them completed. What do you think, Brian? What do you think about those two words and how it applies to even both of us? We could be truth with this, right?
Yeah. I think, this is really pertinent to our conversation in regards to achieving goals, right? And those who are coming up with the three-month goal or their weekly goal or their yearly goal, as some may be planning, and how procrastination can get in the way in the achieving or the overcoming of certain goals. And as the conversation we just briefly had before this is how that sense of fear of failure, which I definitely go through, right? That fear can be motivating to I don't want to fail, so let me do a good job. But depending on the intensity or the duration or the frequency of our thoughts and to that topic, it can actually break us down. Our very thoughts, the multiplication of our anxiety and fear of failure, my God, we crumble under the weight of those ruminations.
I almost want to say, I wonder if it pertains towards all personalities or particular personalities, because I think on both of our personalities is we can say that we're perfectionists, right? So sometimes, at least this article, and I'll mention the article at the end of our recording, and I'll put it there so that way viewers can actually look into it, read it if they want. But the part of procrastination falls so deeply with perfectionists. One, because we want things to be great and perfect, that oftentimes when we put things aside is because, like you said, this part of fear of failure or not doing a good enough job or perfect job. But that really is that inner voice that gets in the way. And that inner voice, we talked about it all the time in our previous recordings. We all have it. And sometimes, like you said, it multiplies, and that we kind of give into that voice. Therefore, we stop. And once again, the procrastination has a lot to do with what we're avoiding, this anxiety, not just this fear, but this anxiety that it puts us in. So when we procrastinate, we almost want to say we feel relieved, but these tasks will always exist, right?
And I think, when we think about the Myers-Briggs, right, when we think of the perceiving trait and the trait, right, or we think about and we include a little bit of psychoanalysis into it, those with the J traits, the judges as they call them, right, who are so driven by a sense of responsibility, priority, follow through, and then in the meantime accommodate everybody and all different circumstances, right, where it can feel like there's so many moving parts, and how do you organize all those moving parts while you're juggling, is that the J's with their anxieties, I need to get it done, right? A sense of completion, right? The Zeigarnik effect, or in cognitive behavioral therapy, they call it cognitive completion. And in that sense of needing it to be complete, like when you think of the Zen sign, right? The circle, it needs to have a completion. The J's are driven by that need for completion. And when they feel that they can't, that's where that weight burdens them, and then they procrastinate. But essentially, J's, because of that need, they complete a task to avoid anxiety, and perceivers avoid a task to avoid anxiety. To avoid that task is to avoid I don't want to deal with it. So J's, you can crumble under the weight of. They can become like perceivers. So who are we to talk about, like J's are better or perceivers are better? It's just when danger gets really scary, we can either fight, flight, or freeze.
And I think like also because of what you're saying, I feel like I work with a lot of J's. I don't know about you, but those J's that I have, it's always difficulties with being disorganized or just having a lot of, like you said, tasks to complete, and maybe also doing jobs for others. And maybe that kind of gets in the way because I feel like that's quite common. So how do we focus on being able to complete? And normally what I say is focus on the small tasks versus the bigger tasks, right? Because the bigger tasks can take a lot longer. And I have to go back with this because I wrote it on the paper as well. With this article, it really was focusing on this need to complete versus avoidance. So procrastination versus precrastination. And then Abraham Maslow was talking about two choices. And one of those choices is the fear choices versus the growth choices. And I thought that was so great because fear is avoidance. And then we go back saying, oh, I should have, or what if I did it, versus the growth choices of the potential for growth. I can learn, and what is it that I can see from here? Even if it's not, I don't need a trophy, but I just need almost like this growth choice, the ability to just acknowledge like how good it felt, how good it feels to know a little bit more. Like I'm saying,
more reward based, yes.
Yeah, like I'm just using this article as an example because it just had so many different points in it, and it was focusing on all these different areas. And I feel a little bit more educated just by reading that article because it was so great because it tapped into all these things. It talked about these famous individuals, and there's so many out there, right? Who Dr. Seuss, Margaret Mitchell, who wrote Gone with the Wind, and they were talking about how they had to go through a lot of failures and rejection in order to succeed, in order to become who it is that they want to become. And sometimes we have to go through it in order to become better individuals.
Yes. And I think, as they say, right, the psychology behind the fear of failure is a failure to grow. And when I remember reading that in one of our analytical papers, I was like, wow, here I am, desiring to grow and to become a better version of myself. And I can be so often plagued by that fear of failure. So hence that concept, or, I think we've talked like, I wonder what awesomeness could come from this. So that we are looking at the awesomeness and the reward versus the fear of failure. Skip that. If we're going to be thinking ahead, why not think about the reward, right? Let's tame our imagination. That it can, that something awesome could come from this.
I'm like laughing at the same time as I say this, and I know this is going to obviously be recorded and put it on our YouTube channel. But I have to pause our video because I have a daughter who's knocking on my door and needs my attention. So just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
So we'll just returning to our viewers. I had to pause for a moment. This is what happens in real life situations. We get interrupted by our children and we have to move on into our routines, right? That we have. But going back into what you were saying, Brian, right?
Yeah, the fear of growth, right? Like to instead of thinking about the fear, if we have to think future based as a way to motivate and drive us, and to think reward systems, to kind of, for my own trickery in a sentence, like, I wonder what awesomeness become. So we return to wonderment and curiosity versus that reasonable doubt. Right, whatever doubt we have, even if it's not reality based, but somehow our brain is able to reason and say, no, that is possible. That could happen.
And that's and it stops, as I listen to you, it stops so many of us, right? Because it is that inner voice, that inner critic, that inner voice that says, you're not good. This is not going to be good. You're not going to do a good job. And of course, we're human beings. We also, this almost fear of what will everybody think of me. Like that comes up so much. And whether that stems from, our growing and from children to teenagers go through so much of that stuff, right? Because we're trying to find where is it that we fit in. So that voice will always exist. And it's almost how likely are we going to give into this voice? Yeah. And we do. There's a side of us that will give into that voice, like you said, right? The part of fear of failure, maybe I need to put aside and do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow might become after tomorrow. You'll have done it. And maybe that falls into this part of needing to be perfect in some ways. Um, but also just understanding that that's also the part of growth. We will never know what our successes are unless we face them, unless we
And I
face
think
those
gratitude as
challenges.
well, right? Having a gratitude journal
Yes,
for me, like,
yes,
gives you to account like,
absolutely.
well, I did get things done today.
Hmm.
You know, it can
And
become the things done list versus the things to do list.
yes, and that goes into like life coaching too. Like I feel like a lot of times, we focus on like the big goals, which is great. But in order to get the big goals achieved, we have to focus on the smaller ones. I cannot just be on top of the ladder. Like that's one thing that I always use
Mhm.
without taking the first step. I can't fly. If I had wings, maybe I would. But I have to take a first step in order to climb it. So you're talking about the gratitude journal. That was actually one of those pointers that was mentioned in this article is what is it that we can do to not procrastinate, to pre-crastinate, so that way we can focus on and now in the present moment. And it's the small things that count, the part of making a phone call or answering emails. Or I'll use us, for example. We couldn't do our recording yesterday because I had other things that kind of came in a way that needed to be prioritized. But we took this and we put it into a window the following day because we know we need to do it. We know we're busy. Our
Well,
schedules
we
are
are
busy.
committed, right? We have that part
Yes.
where we are very committed to our goals and our purpose.
Yeah, yes. And right. So that kind of goes into what precrastination, we would say, the ability to complete today because we know we need to do it. And it also, I think, falls into maybe how we would feel if it were not completed.
Yeah,
The drag,
beginning
right? The
effect. Yeah.
Yes. And I think maybe that's what we're trying to avoid, this part of not wanting to deal with not doing it because then we're thinking about it too much. So it's a way of kind of not thinking about it, get it done so that we can focus on
I
next
have to say
next
for
task.
us, though, at least I can speak for my part, is that
Hmm.
I enjoy these conversations.
Yes.
And it
Yeah,
almost
maybe
feels
that's
like
it.
self-care, like to connect and to have
Human
meaningful
connection.
conversations.
Yes.
And hopefully these conversations, but at least in my mind, that have the potential to make the world a better place.
I like what you said, connection. I don't know, it stood out for me because I think one of our first recordings that we ever did that we posted on YouTube is about human significance and connecting because I was so early on with COVID, right? Hence where we were, not so much today, separated from physical human connections that we longed for these connections and we enjoy it. It just proves of how much of importance it is even for those individuals going back to Myers-Briggs, the introverts, those who are okay being alone, most of the time, if not all the time. But at the same time, there's almost this longing for someone, just that one person. So it sure proves to us how important that connection is. So for us, this is not to procrastinate, but this is to do because it brings us joy and great conversations. And they're real conversations. There's few edited points because the pause, like we just did, but we still continue on. And I think that's what also feels great. So it pushes us forward. It
Yeah.
pushes us
Not to
forward.
not be bogged down by the contrasts, as to not be bogged down or fail to continue due to the circumstances of life. That is a very gentle and loving interruption, but there's so many things that we deal in life that can just rob us of our joy
Oh
and
my
enjoyment,
God.
right?
Absolutely. This is also going back to the perfectionist side of us or those who, I don't know, procrastinate is we have a tendency to think that going back, we need to be perfect versus being good enough. Because what is a perfection? We all might have a different image of what perfection is, right? But at the same time, all of the work that we do or someone else does, it requires work and ethics and ability to um, to commit in order for it to be great. I mean, we wouldn't be therapists today if it were not for what the education, the materials, the articles, the studies, the research, all of those things for many, many years to get us to where we are today. And we still learn, we still educate ourselves because we enjoy it. So Right. I think it's, for our viewers, it's really, how do I not procrastinate? How am I able to complete my tasks? And I think the message that we want to maybe send out today is really to focus on the small tasks before completing the big ones, and to also give yourself credit for being good enough versus perfect.
And a third one, if I could add, is just
Yeah.
do it. Sometimes when we overthink it or we overfeel it, our feelings and our rumination gets in the way of we give too much meaning to certain tasks. And so my commitment today in regards to our conversation is to at least respond to 20 emails and if possible, 30 emails. You see, I have to stretch it, right? But if I can respond to 20 emails and just get it down to 53 unresponded messages.
And we have them all the time. Yes. This is like almost like a good lesson for us, right? As that they need to respond now versus giving ourselves almost a time frame, as well as our clients or everybody else. And we do this all the time. We let others know, please give us enough time to respond, because there's other things that we do, unless of course it's urgency, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for this conversation that we're having today. Yeah.
The need to do and complete, and we have yet to continue to complete more, so that way we can move on to bigger tasks and our goals for 2021. So for our viewers, we hope that you found this segment helpful in so many ways of what can we do in order to not procrastinate, and what is it that we can do in the present moment, so that way we can complete some of these tasks. And also to know that our brains are full of thoughts, and sometimes those thoughts prevent us from doing. What we have to do is just acknowledge it and then go back to what we had started. We're humans. So a lot of times I'm going to say we're not necessarily perfect, although we would like to be, and whatever that looks like. So subscribe to our channel, comment, share, and give us any information that you would like for us to talk, and be human. Brian, yet again, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Have a wonderful and meaningful and deliberate day ahead.
Yes.